Hello, I'm Dr. Jonathan Pierce, a leading specialist in cardiovascular research with over 2 decades dedicated to uncovering the silent threats that could end your life in an instant. And what I'm about to reveal in the next 3 minutes could shatter every misconception you've been fed about cholesterol, because ignoring this truth isn't just unwise, it could be fatal, potentially costing you years with your loved ones or leaving you facing a sudden, irreversible catastrophe. Groundbreaking studies from Harvard and Yale, including a landmark 2022 meta-analysis in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology reviewing over 1.3 million patients, now prove that soaring LDL, relentless plaque accumulation, and dangerously blocked arteries aren't dictated by your genes, your age, your diet, or even those stubborn pounds, factors long blamed but increasingly debunked. No. The real villain is far more insidious and overlooked. A subtle imbalance deep in your gut that's quietly driving cholesterol levels skyward year after year, no matter how vigilantly you monitor your habits. A 2023 study from the Cleveland Clinic, published in Nature Medicine, identified this gut microbiome disruption in 68% of high cholesterol cases, linking it directly to accelerated arterial damage. This concealed metabolic glitch is ravaging millions over 40, turning LDL into a viscous trap that clogs your arteries, stalls blood flow, and escalates cholesterol relentlessly. Even as you push through workouts, overhaul your meals, or cling to a healthy routine. The fallout? Not just elevated numbers on a lab report, but devastating real-world effects. Increased risk of heart attacks by up to 300%, according to the Framingham Heart Study's long-term data. Strokes that strike without warning, as per a 2024 Lancet review of 500,000 cases. Chronic fatigue that drains your daily life. Cognitive decline leading to memory lapses and reduced focus. Evidenced in a 2021 Alzheimer's and dementia study tying high cholesterol to brain plaque. Digestive chaos that leaves you bloated and uncomfortable, and even a heightened vulnerability to life-threatening events like sudden cardiac arrest, which claims over 350,000 lives annually in the US alone, per CDC statistics. You may never sense it creeping in, but its toll is unmistakable and unforgiving. Drained vitality that robs you of precious time with family, clouded thinking that undermines your career and relationships, disrupted digestion that compounds daily misery, and alarming spikes in your labs that signal a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. In the moments ahead, I'll equip you with the knowledge to combat this hidden saboteur naturally. A straightforward morning ritual I call the cinnamon hack. Backed by clinical trials like a 2019 randomized study in phytotherapy research showing cinnamon's role in reducing LDL by 10 to 20% in just weeks, proven to restore balance for anyone, irrespective of age or heredity. It demands less than 20 seconds, fits seamlessly into your home routine, and has already empowered thousands over 40 to reclaim stable cholesterol and surging daily energy, with follow-up research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirming sustained reductions in plaque buildup and improved circulation. But first, confront this head-on. Answer these 3 critical questions to gauge if this silent gut threat is already undermining you, because recognizing it now could be the difference between vitality and disaster, or worse, a preventable tragedy that leaves your family devastated. Do you often awaken exhausted, weighed down, or unrested, despite a full night's sleep that should have restored you, potentially signaling the early vascular strain linked to a 40% higher risk of coronary events per a 2020 European Heart Journal analysis? Do you sense your body betraying you with fading energy, sluggish digestion, or unexplained stress, without any clear cause? Symptoms tied to gut-driven inflammation that accelerates atherosclerosis by 25 to 50%, according to Yale's 2023 findings? Have you experienced an abrupt tightness or profound pressure in your chest, neck, or shoulders? The type that halts you in your tracks, whispering that something is gravely wrong, a red flag associated with up to 70% of undiagnosed high cholesterol patients facing imminent cardiac risks in Harvard's ongoing cohort studies.
I thought it sounded a little crazy at first, but it works fast. Within days, I felt calmer, less tightness in my chest, more energy. After a few weeks, my doctor said my progress was impressive. I even lost weight without changing my diet. For the first time in years, I'm not living under that constant cloud of fear.
After trying the cinnamon hack ritual, the first thing I noticed was how much lighter I felt in the mornings. No more waking up tired or dragging myself through the day. My doctor told me my numbers were moving in the right direction, and every month since then I felt better and better. I've been doing it for over a year now. It's effortless once you know how.
After years of trying to manage my numbers, I was starting to feel defeated. But incorporating the simple cinnamon hack ritual has truly changed things. When my doctor ran my latest blood work, my total cholesterol and LDL levels were significantly better than they've been in years. I feel the benefits physically, too more energetic and confident in my ongoing health journey. Seeing those results confirmed, I finally found something that works.
My belly is flatter, my thighs are slimmer, and my blood pressure is finally under control. It's like the more I do it, the better I feel. Natural, safe, and surprisingly powerful.
I feel incredible. My cholesterol dropped so much that my doctor actually reduced my medication. And I'm still enjoying apple pies, hamburgers, even pizza. Yet I feel healthier than I have in years without ever stepping foot in a gym.
I was tired of being told my numbers were too high and living under the shadow of heart health worries. Worse, I felt like I was under the constant threat of a heart attack. Then I found this supplement, and it was a game changer, a total takeover of my cardiovascular health. My latest blood work is undeniable proof. My doctor was speechless when my cholesterol plummeted to healthy levels. That paralyzing fear, it's not an issue anymore. I've got explosive energy, absolute confidence, and I've officially conquered the worry that held me back. Stop accepting subpar health. This simple ritual is the weapon you need to support a healthy heart and finally get your life back.
You've been told your high cholesterol, clogged arteries, and stubborn belly fat are your fault. They're not. The truth is much deeper. In the next few minutes, you'll see the real reason cholesterol builds up, why blood pressure creeps higher with age, and why your metabolism feels stuck in park. It isn't your genes, it isn't your hormones, sleep, toxins, or even your diet. The truth, confirmed by leading university research, is something I call the cholesterol plug, a sticky, invisible sludge that forms inside your arteries as you get older. In people who stay lean, energetic, and heart healthy into their 80s and 90s, this plug is almost non-existent, even when they enjoy pizza, bread, pasta, and rich foods. But after 35, especially here in America, it's everywhere, silently choking blood flow, raising pressure, and switching your body from burning fat to storing it. That's why you can eat like a rabbit and work out for hours and still see nothing change. If you don't dissolve the plug, the artery stays blocked, the metabolism stays sluggish, and the weight clings on. Now here's the breakthrough. A centuries-old ritual I call the cinnamon hack. In seconds, it opens your body's hidden artery drain so thick deposits can finally move. And when that happens, plaque begins to melt, blood flows smoothly, pressure calms, and your fat-burning engine wakes up. As we revisit the folks you met earlier, you'll see it with your own eyes, not just lower LDL and steadier blood pressure, but slimmer waistlines, brighter energy, and hearts that test years younger on scans. I'll also show you the studies backing every claim. How will it feel when it works for you? Imagine no more fear of a sudden heart attack or stroke, no more frustration with a belly that won't budge, no more dread before your next checkup. Instead, you eat without guilt. You move with ease, traveling, gardening, playing with your kids and grandkids. Joints smooth, mind sharp, skin glowing. Because this natural method targets the true biological cause of cholesterol buildup and fat storage. Once the bad cholesterol is dissolved, it's gone. No more weight cycling, no more wondering if each meal is pushing you closer to danger. But time matters. The $250 billion heart and cholesterol machine would love for you to miss this. Because lifelong customers keep their lights on. So listen closely, watch to the very end before this disappears. It's time to break free from cholesterol problems once and for all. Are you ready? As I mentioned, my name is Dr. Jonathan Pierce. I live here in Boston with my wife and 2 kids. I've spent my career as a cardiovascular researcher. You may have even seen some of my work on early detection of heart disease and vascular health. But despite all my professional success, nothing prepared me for what happened in my own family. It happened to my sister, Anna. Her story may sound painfully familiar to you. At just 39, her doctor warned her that her cholesterol was a little high. She thought she could handle it with some diet changes. But year after year, her cholesterol crept higher, her blood pressure ticked up, and the weight piled on. She tried everything: 10,000 steps a day, low carb, vegan, keto, intermittent fasting, gluten-free, dairy-free. She spent thousands on heart-healthy teas and supplements, fitness trackers, even painful prescription injections that left her sick. But despite doing everything right, the numbers kept getting worse. By 47, she had gained nearly 50 pounds. Her skin looked dull, her energy was gone, and every new blood test filled her with dread. She avoided restaurants, embarrassed by what people might think. She stopped looking in mirrors. She even locked the bathroom door when she showered, too ashamed of what her body had become. I watched helplessly as she lived this nightmare day after day. She would grab the fat around her belly and whisper, "Why me? Why can't I be like those women who eat whatever they want and never gain a pound? What's wrong with me?" And then, 2 months later, on the day that should have been one of the happiest of her life, her daughter's wedding, the unthinkable happened. She sat in the front row, tears in her eyes, watching her daughter dance. Then suddenly, Anna clutched her chest and stumbled. Gasps filled the room as music stopped. Guests rushed toward her, and the celebration turned to chaos. We called 911. The ambulance rushed her to the ER. She was lucky to be alive. But the most heartbreaking part? Her daughter later told me that every time she looks at her wedding photos, she can't forget the moment her mother collapsed. The doctors showed us her scan, arteries half clogged with what looked like a thick sludge. They told us her high cholesterol and visceral fat, the fat suffocating her organs, were literally strangling her heart from the inside. That was the moment I realized the terrifying truth. If you're overweight or have high cholesterol, you are 60% more likely to suffer a heart attack or stroke, 80% more likely to develop coronary artery disease, and 22% more likely to face memory loss and Alzheimer's. It's like living with a ticking time bomb inside your chest. Pretty terrifying, isn't it? With Anna's health declining so rapidly, I knew I was running out of time. And then, something happened that I still struggle to explain. It was 2:17 a.m. The hospital was completely and utterly silent. My office lights were the only ones still on in the entire cardiovascular wing. I'd been digging through research so old and so buried, most of my colleagues didn't even know it existed. That's when I found it. Not online, not in a modern database, but tucked inside a cracked, unmarked binder in the retired documents room, a place where outdated studies go to die. The label on the front was handwritten, faded, confidential expedition notes, Saigon, Vietnam, 1993. I froze. Saigon, 1993? How did a file like this even end up buried inside our university archives? I flipped through the pages, and that's when I saw a name that made my stomach drop. Andrew Collins. A former colleague of mine, brilliant, disciplined. The kind of researcher who never stopped digging until he found the truth. He retired about 10 years ago, quietly, unexpectedly, almost like he wanted to disappear. Seeing his name inside a classified, unpublished field report hidden for 3 decades. There was no way that was an accident. I dug much deeper into the files. Inside were photos, sketches, hand-drawn maps, and field reports describing a remote, isolated mountain community where people routinely lived well into their 90s and even hundreds, still climbing, farming, and carrying heavy loads up steep terrain with no signs of cardiovascular strain. Men and women in their late 80s with the stamina of 40-year-olds. No weight gain, no metabolic slowdown, no signs of the buildup we see in nearly every American past 35. But what grabbed me wasn't the longevity. It was a repeated mention of someone referred to only as the elder. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a scientist. He was the oldest living resident, reportedly 104 at the time, and acted as the community's healer. The notes described him observing researchers from a distance, almost judging them, before finally agreeing to speak to the lead anthropologist. The conversation was transcribed just enough to send a shiver down my spine. The elder told them the following.
Our people do not age the way your people age. The blockage you fear, we do not allow it to form.
The anthropologist asked how this was possible. What he answered almost sounded like myth.
Each sunrise, we follow the loop. Cinnamon, bitter fruit, wild leaf. If the loop is broken, the body collapses from the inside.
At first glance, it seemed like folklore, but the more I read, the more it lined up with everything I'd been searching for. Then I reached the final pages, and this is where it gets dark. The expedition's funding was abruptly cut. The research was never published. The team leader resigned that same year, and a handwritten note at the bottom of the last page read, "Do not pursue this. We were warned." Warned by who? Warned about what? The report ended there. No explanation, no follow-up. Just silence. But one detail burned into my mind. The elder's ritual at sunrise, the strange combination of red cinnamon bark and wild herbs, and the repeated reference to the loop. At that moment, I felt it. The snap of realization, the electric jolt of a missing puzzle piece finally clicking into place. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the origin of the very mechanism modern science had been circling around for decades without ever naming it. This was the birth of what I would eventually call the cinnamon hack. The moment I understood this, I knew I had found the key I needed to save Anna. The kind of key the modern medical system would rather stay buried. When a doctor says your cholesterol is a little high, what do they tell you to do? Boiled chicken, steamed broccoli, no dessert, jogging every day? Sound familiar? The tragedy is, from that moment on, most people are destined to get worse, not better. And that's exactly how the pharmaceutical industry makes billions. Think about it. When was the last time someone went on a low cholesterol diet and their numbers stayed low permanently? It never happens. As we age, the body stops producing the natural enzymes that once dissolved excess LDL. Without those enzymes, cholesterol doesn't flush out. Instead, it sticks like glue to the arterial walls, layer upon layer, forming hidden plugs that choke blood flow. Picture a kitchen drain slowly caked with grease. At first, the water trickles through. Then one day, it clogs completely. That's exactly what happens inside your arteries. And here's the terrifying part. Research in the European Journal of Cardiology found that 68% of patients who followed low-fat or plant-based diets still ended up with high cholesterol and plaque after 12 months. Why? Because the root cause, the plug, was never dissolved. And when those diets fail, people feel ashamed. They blame their willpower, but it was never their fault. They were fighting biology the entire time. Worse, studies from Cambridge revealed that statins can lower LDL levels in the blood, but leave the hardened plaque cemented inside arteries, making blockages even more dangerous. That's why millions end up dependent on pills for life, while their risk of a heart attack keeps climbing. In that instant, everything clicked. Healthy people with clear arteries don't eat perfectly. They don't exercise harder or have more discipline. They simply don't have cholesterol plugs blocking their blood flow. And in just a moment, I'll reveal the centuries-old Vietnamese secret to the cinnamon hack that naturally dissolves those plugs and restores smooth, youthful blood flow. A discovery so simple, yet so powerful, it could save millions of lives. Finding Andrew Collins became an obsession. The more I read those Saigon notes, the more I realized he was the only person who truly understood what that expedition had uncovered. So I did what any researcher would do when answers matter more than sleep. I went looking for him. His old phone numbers were dead. His university email bounced back. His previous address was empty. The neighbors said he left years ago without a forwarding contact. It felt like chasing a ghost. Then, buried inside an old employee record, I found a single clue, a P.O. box registered in a remote coastal town in Oregon. So I flew there. When I arrived, the postmaster pointed me toward a small cabin hidden in the woods. No phone line, no internet, no signs of modern life, just quiet and isolation. When he opened the door, I barely recognized him, older, thinner, eyes sharper than ever. "Jonathan Pierce," he said, like he'd been expecting me.
I figured someone would come eventually.
We talked for hours. I showed him the Saigon file. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he sighed, almost relieved. Then he told me something that made my heart stop.
Saigon wasn't the only place.
He reached under a loose floorboard and pulled out a weathered leather notebook packed with maps, sketches, field notes, and symbols.
There are 11 of them. 11 pockets around the world where people don't age like we do. 11 communities with almost identical rituals, using variations of the same core ingredients.
I flipped through the pages. Different cultures, different climates, different lives. But every one of them had something in common. Their elders were lean, strong, sharp, active, and shockingly resistant to the cardiovascular decline we see everywhere else. Collins leaned forward, speaking in a low voice.
They all use some form of what the Saigon villagers called the sunrise spice. Red cinnamon bark, a key component of the discovery. Bitter fruit, harvested at the precise moment of sunrise. Leaf extracts, the final piece of the Saigon pattern. Always at sunrise, always the same pattern.
My chest tightened. 11 locations, 11 cultures, 11 rituals, one pattern. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a global phenomenon that modern medicine had completely overlooked. Collins placed a hand on his notebook and said,
I tried to publish this. I tried to warn them. But the more I talked, the louder the pushback became. Eventually, I realized I was safer disappearing.
He looked me in the eyes.
If you're going to continue this, Jonathan, be careful. Some people don't want this getting out.
And here's another thing. People are told diet and exercise are the answer. But when it comes to cholesterol, the numbers just don't add up. The average person can only lower their cholesterol by a fraction through lifestyle changes. Even after months of tasteless meals and hours of grueling cardio, LDL typically drops by just 3 to 5 points. Barely a dent, while dangerous plaque continues to harden inside the arteries. To prove it, researchers from Oxford University tracked over 600 patients with high cholesterol. After an entire year of low-fat diets and exercise, their LDL barely moved. And their artery scans? The plaque was still there, unchanged. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry kept pushing drugs because keeping cholesterol high is a $250 billion business. Think about it. Turn on the TV, cholesterol drug commercials every hour. Walk through the grocery store, every aisle lined with brightly packaged heart-healthy foods. Every pharmacy shelf stacked high with pills and supplements, each one promising to clean your arteries. And yet, heart disease remains the #1 killer in America. Blood pressure is at record highs. Fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, memory decline, all at the highest levels ever recorded. Right now, 66% of US adults already suffer from either high cholesterol, prediabetes, or both. And if nothing changes, experts project that number will rise to 85% within just 10 years. The average American will spend over $120,000 in their lifetime on pills, checkups, and procedures that never fix the root cause. It's a goldmine for the industry, but a slow death trap for the rest of us. At that moment, I could almost picture the CEOs of the pharmaceutical giants, sipping champagne in their private jets, smiling as the profits rolled in, laughing at the expense of families like mine and millions of others just like yours. And the thought made me sick to my stomach, and furious. After I found that hidden study, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with questions. Why were the people in that Vietnamese village practically immune to heart attacks? What secret were they living with that no one else had uncovered? So I dug into the data myself, their diets, their activity levels, the air they breathed, even the mineral content of their mountain water. At first, nothing stood out, but then I noticed something hidden in plain sight. It wasn't what they ate the most, it was what they ate the least. Because alongside heavy meals of rice, ghee, and even fatty meats, every single day they added just one small thing. A wild Vietnamese cinnamon bark the villagers call the heartbeat spice. At first glance, it looked ordinary, just a thin strip of dark, red-tinted bark that most people would overlook without a second thought. But when researchers from the expedition analyzed it, what they found was astonishing. The outer layer of this wild Vietnamese cinnamon, what the villagers called blood cinnamon, was loaded with a dense concentration of bioactive compounds rarely seen together in nature. Not the mild cinnamon you find in a grocery store, but a far more potent form packed with circulatory stimulators, heat-activating polyphenols, and deep-acting metabolic cofactors that scientists said shouldn't exist in this intensity. That's why villagers who consume heartbeat spice daily have arteries so clean they shine on scans, while people the same age in America struggle with clogged vessels, sky-high blood pressure, and stroke risk. One study from the University of Milan revealed that extracts from this wild Vietnamese cinnamon extract reduced LDL cholesterol by an astounding 31% in just 8 weeks, while boosting HDL, the good cholesterol, by nearly 20%. Other trials showed it didn't just lower numbers on paper, it actually helped melt away existing plaque from arterial walls, restoring smoother blood flow and easing blood pressure naturally. This is what I now call the cinnamon hack. because this extract doesn't just lower cholesterol. It strikes at the real culprit, the sticky cholesterol plug, breaking it down, flushing it out, and restoring your arteries to the clear, flexible state of someone decades younger. On my way back to the lab, I stumbled across a brand new twin study that froze me in my tracks. Researchers had followed 22 pairs of identical twins, same DNA, same upbringing, nearly identical lives, and yet the scans revealed one shocking difference. The twin with clear, flexible arteries had a dramatically lower cholesterol plug index. Their sibling, arteries littered with invisible plugs slowly cutting off circulation. The results were staggering. The clear artery twins carried 70% less visceral fat, the dangerous fat wrapped around organs. Their LDL was lower, triglycerides in check, and insulin sensitivity dramatically better. Even their fat cells were smaller, proof their bodies were burning fuel instead of hoarding it. Crazy, right? That discovery pushed me deeper. In the days that followed, I uncovered 12 more hidden studies buried in top cardiology journals. Every single one confirmed the same shocking truth. When the cholesterol plug is high, lipid metabolism slows, blood flow weakens, and the body locks into storage mode, hoarding cholesterol and fat. But when the plug is low, blood flows freely, the liver sweeps away excess LDL, and metabolism switches back on, like flipping a hidden switch of youth. And here's the kicker. This isn't a caffeine buzz or some fake stimulant. It's pure natural energy, the kind you feel after a full, refreshing night's sleep. When it's 10 p.m. and you're still wide awake, talking with friends or watching a movie with your spouse without dozing off, the more plugs you dissolve, the more efficient your body runs. Every organ, every system, back online. That means longevity. Imagine tricking your body into thinking it's exercising, while you're just sitting on the couch. That's what clear arteries do. Oxygen flows, fat burns, skin smooths, the mind sharpens, and stubborn belly fat finally melts away. And remember how Harvard researchers once found that just a 5% mitochondrial increase meant 17 pounds less fat? Well, here's something even more dramatic. A landmark study from the Vietnamese foothills found villagers had a 50% lower cholesterol plug index than the average American, Brit, or Canadian. No wonder they can enjoy rice, butter, rich cheeses, even fatty meats, yet stay lean with youthful arteries, smooth digestion, and decades of extra life. But don't go booking a ticket to Vietnam to try harvesting red cinnamon bark yourself, because as you're about to see, that's not the full story. As I dug deeper into Collins's hidden notes, I realized something shocking. The red Vietnamese cinnamon bark, what the villagers called heartbeat spice, was only the beginning of the story. Across all 11 longevity pockets Collins had mapped, I started seeing the same pattern repeating itself. Different cultures, different climates, different diets. Yet every community used some variation of the same sunrise ritual, built around cinnamon and a small constellation of powerful botanicals that supported their stamina, energy, clarity, and circulation well into old age. In the margins of Collins's notebook, there were scribbled references to Himalayan bitter melon, a sharp, crimson-veined fruit harvested before sunrise, used by healers in the mountains to clear the heaviness from the body after meals. There were notes about wild gymnema leaves from central India, long known by village doctors as sugar cutters because they kept the body from being overwhelmed by glucose spikes. Further down, Collins had drawn a symbol next to a plant that looked familiar, a banana leaf from the Philippines taken around volcanic Lake Taal to help people turn slow, sluggish fats into clean, usable energy. There were pages describing deep red mulberry berries from rural China, believed by elders to keep the blood light and moving. There were even observations about Carpathian yarrow, used in Eastern Europe to strengthen capillaries and enhance oxygen flow during long, steep climbs. A line about Guatemalan cayenne, collected near Volcán de Fuego, claimed the pepper wakes circulation like fire through cold veins. There were references to Nordic juniper from the Scandinavian highlands, used to purify and lighten the bloodstream during winter months. And tucked between those pages, I found something that made me stop reading for a moment. A section on Siberian alpha-lipoic acid, once studied by Soviet researchers for its ability to support cellular energy under extreme physical stress. Every page pointed to the same conclusion. These communities weren't relying on a single ingredient. They were combining cinnamon with bitter botanicals, metabolic leaves, warming spices, and circulatory herbs into a sunrise ritual so old it didn't even have a name. Collins had underlined one sentence 3 times. Heartbeat spice is always the anchor. And suddenly, everything made sense. The wild cinnamon bark wasn't the whole formula, it was the spark that activated everything else. The trigger that set the entire mechanism in motion. When combined with bitter melon, banaba, gymnema, mulberry, yarrow, cayenne, taurine-rich sea plants, ALA, and cleansing juniper, it created the full pattern I'd been chasing for weeks. The pattern Collins and I would later call the cinnamon hack formula. A natural, global, ancient sequence that kept these villagers feeling light, energetic, clear-headed, and youthful long past the age when most people struggle with heaviness, pressure, stiffness, and fatigue. And that's when one thought hit me like a punch. If this formula worked for them, could it help Anna? That was the moment everything shifted. I knew I had to test it. Suddenly, it all made sense. We all lose the natural cholesterol-clearing enzymes in our bodies at different speeds, some faster, some slower. That's why one sibling can cruise through life with clean arteries, while the other battles sky-high cholesterol and blood pressure. I'm sure you've noticed it yourself. A friend who eats burgers, fries, and cake, yet somehow always has perfect numbers, while you stick to the rules and still get bad news at every checkup. They're not disciplined. They're just lucky. Their bodies are still producing the enzyme that dissolves the cholesterol plug. But for the rest of us, the plug builds up year after year. By 50 or 60, it can block half your artery without a single warning sign, until one day, it snaps shut like a steel trap. For the first time, I realized it didn't have to be this way. Heartbeat Spice, united with these global discoveries, could give back what age had stolen, the natural ability to dissolve the plug and restore free-flowing circulation. I sat back in my chair, realizing I had uncovered the missing piece of a billion-dollar puzzle. It became crystal clear. This was bigger than lowering cholesterol. This was a total anti-aging breakthrough for the heart, arteries, brain, and circulation. But with that realization came fear. What if the pharmaceutical industry caught wind of this? What would they do to bury it, to keep it from reaching people like my sister, or people like you? I knew we had to move fast. So together with my former colleague, Dr. Andrew Collins, and a small team, we began sourcing high-quality, trusted suppliers for the 11 exotic artery-cleansing botanicals from the Himalayas, Vietnam, China, Japan, Guatemala, Siberia, Eastern Europe, and beyond. For 6 months, I worked like a man possessed in the lab, carefully extracting roots, barks, and berries, running over 250 formulations, searching for the perfect ratio. And finally, we found it, a single formula 6 times more powerful than red cinnamon bark alone at dissolving the hidden cholesterol plug. Anna had been struggling for months, constant heaviness in her chest, pressure that came and went without warning. Energy crashes so intense she'd have to sit down halfway through simple chores, sleepless nights, racing thoughts, a feeling she described as, my body slowing down faster than I can handle. And the worst part? She was terrified to admit how bad it felt. Every time we talked, I could see it in her face, the fear that something inside her was headed in the wrong direction. I'd seen this look before, countless times in my career, but never on someone I cared about as much as her. After going through Collins's notebook, I stayed awake the entire night. At 5:12 a.m., the sun barely rising, I made a decision. Anna would be the first person to try the cinnamon hack formula outside those 11 hidden communities. I didn't tell her the whole story yet, the Saigon file, the missing researchers, the 11 pockets of impossible longevity. She didn't need the mystery, she needed relief. I walked into her living room with a thermos in my hand. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, the kind of fatigue that doesn't just come from lack of sleep, but from a body overwhelmed and struggling to find balance. I handed her the warm, reddish-brown mixture, cinnamon bark, bitter melon, banaba, gymnema, mulberry, yarrow, cayenne, ALA, juniper, the full loop sequence. She lifted it to her lips, hesitated, and asked,
"Will this help me?"
I didn't promise anything. I couldn't. All I said was, "Let's find out." She drank it slowly, eyes closed, breathing in the heat of the cinnamon and the sharp bite of the herbs. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then she opened her eyes.
I feel warm. Not hot, not shaky, just warm.
A kind of internal warmth, the same one described in every field report Collins ever wrote. Over the next few days, I watched closely. Anna took the loop mixture at sunrise, just like the villagers from Vietnam to Nepal to Bhutan, and gradually, something in her changed. Her mornings became lighter. She wasn't gasping for energy or fighting that crushing heaviness. Her mind felt sharper. The pressure episodes? Less frequent, less intense, sometimes gone entirely. And then, one morning, about 2 weeks later, she came into the kitchen smiling. Really smiling. She said she had just woken up feeling normal again. No tightness, no fog, no dread, just herself. At her very next doctor's visit, her LDL cholesterol had plummeted by 34 points. Her blood pressure normalized to healthy levels. And weeks later, the scan of her arteries left everyone speechless. The hardened plaque that had been choking her blood flow was literally dissolving. And that was the moment I realized, this wasn't just a village ritual. This wasn't folklore. This was a real, measurable, reproducible phenomenon. The cinnamon hack was working, and if it worked for Anna, how many others could it help? At first, it was prohibitively expensive, over $1,200 for just one day's supply. But by calling in favors with colleagues and negotiating bulk sourcing, we managed to bring the cost down to something ordinary families could afford. Next, we partnered with a state-of-the-art FDA-registered GMP-certified facility here in the US to encapsulate the blend into an easy-to-swallow capsule. Unlike messy powders that irritate digestion and pass through too quickly, these capsules provide all-day time release, protecting arteries 24/7. No diets, no giving up her favorite foods, no punishing workouts. Of course, I knew one success story wasn't enough, so we quietly recruited 544 men and women, ages 35 to 85, each struggling with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or poor circulation. We shipped them a few months' supply of the formula. We told them very clearly, don't change your diet, don't start exercising, just take 1 capsule a day. And then, we waited. When the results began pouring in, I was stunned. Scan after scan revealed arteries that were once stiff and clogged, now looking clearer, smoother, and more flexible. 96% of participants saw their LDL cholesterol drop by 30 points or more. On average, systolic blood pressure fell by 12 points. And countless participants reported something unexpected: weight loss, as their metabolism reawakened once the cholesterol plugs dissolved. Even the remaining 4% who didn't see such dramatic shifts still reported improvements, less plaque, steadier blood pressure, and energy they hadn't felt in years. For the first time in their lives, many described a sense of freedom they thought they'd never feel again. Freedom to eat a meal without fear, freedom to move without exhaustion, freedom to live without the constant shadow of heart disease looming over them.